Hi, this is Austin with Brush for Hire with another mini wargaming painting tutorial featuring the Grey Knight Dreadknight from Games Workshop. Today we're going to be working on the Nemesis Greatsword, and what we've done is we've just taped off the handle with masking tape, and we're going over the blade with Necron Abyss foundation paint from Games Workshop. Now we're going to tape off opposite sides of the blade like this so that we can do half of the blade each time. It's very important to let the base coat set for a few hours before you apply the tape. I'll show you in a little while what might happen if you don't. Right now we're just coming back in with more Necron Abyss with just a little bit of white added to it. You're probably going to be doing about 4-to-1 Necron Abyss to white for this stage. We're just going to pick out a couple of areas on each side of the blade, and we're going to coat them in this new slightly lighter mixture. We're going to leave some of the original Necron Abyss in between. We don't want a whole lot of the Necron Abyss left, but we do want to leave some, so don't cover the entire area. We're just going to go ahead and do the other side as well. Try to mix up which areas you hit on these. Because they're opposing sides and they don't actually have any touching parts, it's not as critical for these two, but you'll have to keep that in mind for when we do the parts that are actually under the tape. Now, on the next stage, we're just adding a little bit more white to our mixture, maybe a drop or two into our container. And we're just going to do a slightly smaller area inside the second stage that we did. So now we're following the same procedure again. We've added a little more white to it, and we are progressively getting smaller and smaller as we work towards the middles of these regions that we've created. Now we're just doing pure white in the very middle of each of these areas. So now we've completed the two sets of gradients. We're going to go ahead and peel off the tape to reveal the other side, which we have not done yet. And like I noted previously, this is what might happen if you don't let the base coat set before you put the tape on. I would suggest at least an hour or two before you apply tape. So here we have the opposite sides taped now, and we've applied Necron Abyss to these areas again. We're following the same procedure as the other sides, making sure not to have the highlights in exactly the same area so that we get a contrast between the two halves of the blade. Finishing up, we're going to carefully peel the tape back. We let the previous layer set for several hours before we applied the tape the second time, as not to run into the same issues as before. We're also going to be painstakingly slow when taking the tape off this time, as we don't want to risk even well-set paint pulling off with a quick removal of tape. So here we have the finished product. So now we're going to highlight the edges of the blade with Skull White. We're just going to use the side of the brush to highlight these edges because it gives us better control than attempting to do it with the point. When you're highlighting the edge like this, try to make sure that your brush stays perpendicular with the blade and that you're moving exactly with the line of the blade. If you're pulling or pushing, you may actually roll paint off onto the surface of the blade. Now, during this portion of the highlighting, you're going to want to be very careful. You may have to go very slowly because this line is much harder to hit without actually touching the surfaces around it than the edges of the blade are. So just be very careful and gentle when you're doing this part, because it's very easy to ruin several hours worth of work. We're going to fill in these raised letter areas with tarnished brass from the Reaper line. It's a fairly quick process. Once we get the lettering on both sides, we're going to go back in and wash with Ogren flesh in exactly the same way that we're applying the gold right now. Next, we're going to apply the same tarnished brass to this pommel area and some of the other details around it. Next, we're going to apply dark flesh from the Citadel line to the entire handle. We're trying to achieve a red leather effect, so this is a good base coat. Be careful when getting inside the hand, as we don't want to get any on the silver parts of the gauntlet. Matching colors at this point may be difficult. Next, we'll apply Leviathan Purple Wash to all of the gold portions that are not the raised letters. This will achieve a contrasting, more bronzy look compared to the intense gold look of the raised letters. You may have to come back for a second coat on some of these parts to achieve the darkness that you want. One thing to note about applying multiple layers of washes to a single surface is that you want the first coat to be completely dry before you apply the next coat. Unlike with paint, if you apply the second layer before the first layer is completely dry, you may inadvertently create strange lines and other aberrations in the finished product. Now we're going to apply a very generous coat of devlin mud to the handle. There we go. That is the finished Nemesis Greatsword. This has been part 3 of a painting tutorial on the Grey Knight Dreadknight. Thank you for watching. Please tune in for the next installment, and as always, happy wargaming.